For now, Mayor Adams says he's not going anywhere. But whether or not Eric Adams stays in office may not be up to Eric Adams. Under New York state law, the mayor can be removed by the governor if charged with a crime, or the city council could also form something called an inability committee to essentially impeach the mayor and take him out of office. Now, if Adams does resign or is removed, the person who would automatically become the mayor of America's largest city is New York City public advocate Jumaane Williams, and he joins me now. Mr. Williams, thanks for being here on a very, very big news night.
Thank you for having me and also helping introduce a whole host of people to what a public advocate is.
Yeah, yes. This is the time to talk about public advocacy, if there was ever a time. First of all, in the last hour, the governor of New York, Governor Kathy Hochul, has released a statement, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. It reads in part, while I review my options and obligations as the governor of New York, I expect the mayor to take the next few days to review the situation and find an appropriate path forward to ensure the people of New York City are being well served by their leaders. That sure sounds to me like she'd like the mayor to decide to step down.
You know, first of all, this is a painful time period for a lot of us in New York and a lot of folks who work with a lot of these folks in the news right now. It is really painful. We want to make sure that the city of New Yorkers understand that we are going to make sure government continues to work.
Yeah.
As someone who has done a lot of work around making a better, just criminal legal system,
yeah.
Innocent until proven guilty is a real thing, and no matter who it is. At the same time, these are really serious charges. Even the breadth is larger than I thought.
Yeah.
I think the mayor has to really think within himself, can I conduct business the way I need to with this weight? And can I help restore trust? And the window to show that is rapidly closing, but I think it's a real question that he has to answer.
Have you talked to the governor at all?
I have not spoken to the governor since this bill.
Have you spoken to the mayor?
I have not spoken to the mayor since this bill.
Are you surprised? I mean, right now, his posture has been one of defiance. We played the sound this morning of his press conference, and he's exiting the stage literally to chants of resign, 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 resign. This doesn't feel like something that gets better the longer he stays defiant. What would you like to see from the mayor right now?
So I think to what you just said, this seems to get worse by the day, and in some cases by the minute. I don't think that you can put together a plan to show that you can continue doing this, but that's what he has to do. So if there is a way to show that I can continue doing my work, I can keep running the government, I can restore trust, you should just do that. And deflection is not a plan. Continuing to deflect and pretending this is not as serious as it is, and it's something that you might be able to just explain away, is not that plan. So if you have one, say what it is, because we really want to hear it, and New Yorkers deserve it.
Yeah, New Yorkers do deserve it. I do wonder, first of all, when you read the indictment, the evidence alleged in there is extraordinary. This is barely concealed corruption. It is so transparent. It is a gross misuse of public funds to the tune of maybe $10 million. What was your reaction when you read it?
It's pretty bad. There's no way around that. And I will say, even if, people could say that, they weren't surprised, even though you're disappointed. For me, the breadth of it was what shocked me, and the length of time shocked me. And it was a pretty laid out case, in my opinion. But again, the presumption of innocence is really important. And giving someone the ability to defend themselves is really important. Now, that is different from saying, can you continue to function to make sure the city's running? Can you help restore trust?
What has been the reaction inside New York City governance?
And everybody's concerned. It's a chaotic moment.
Were people surprised?
I mean, I don't know if people were surprised or more just saddened that we're in this moment in time. I mean, this has been building for a very long time. I think the breadth of it was a little shocking. I don't think many of us expected some of the things that we saw. And so people are just trying to figure out, how do we portray trust to the people of New York? That's what it's about. That's what the succession plan is about. Just having a plan in case an eventuality happens, that New Yorkers can know that trash is going to get picked up. 911 is going to be answered. 311 is going to be answered. These are things that people really care about. And I don't know the mayor has done a good job of showing that I have a plan to do that at this moment in time.
I do wonder, when you talk of there's the easy way out, I guess, to use the sort of mafia parlance where the mayor decides to leave. And then there is the governor saying you got to go. There is what is called the Inability Committee, which would be a 5-member committee involving the New York City Corporation Counsel, the lawyer who is no longer in office. So that's an empty seat. The New York City Comptroller, who's already running against Eric Adams for mayor, the city council speaker, and the longest-serving borough president and a deputy mayor of Adams' choosing. Have we ever been here before? Can you tell us about the Inability Committee and how that might come to pass?
We are definitely in uncharted territories. That is 100% correct. The positions you just mentioned, 2 of them are not even in at this moment in time. We could have a whole story of why the general counsel is not in. That's a whole thing by itself. So it's uncharted territories, and who knows which direction it's going to be. And I think that's why a lot of us, including myself, are asking the mayor to look within himself and really have some conversations about what is best for New York City right now. What is best to restore trust? What is best to display that the city is going to continue to move forward? That's something that he has to answer, but he has to answer it. And if you're sitting back like me and saying, I just don't see how you can put that out, what plan it's going to look like. But if there is one, let us know. And again, just continue to deflect is not a plan. Just saying, brushing aside is not a plan. This is really, really tough stuff, painful stuff, but we're here. None of us want to be in this moment, and we really have to do what's best for New York City.
Are you what's best for New York City? Are you ready to step in if the mayor's out?
I got to tell you, what's best for New York City right now is that we have tens of thousands of dedicated public sector workers who make sure that everything keeps running. And I want to hat tip to them because they are the ones that are making sure that the trash is going to get picked up, that are making sure that those calls are going to get answered. But, as you ride out on sort of autopilot, you got to get a pilot in there. And the mayor just really has to ask some tough questions to himself, and I hope he does that very shortly.
New York City public advocate, advocating for the public and the public sector workers. It's great to see you. Thanks for your time. We will be watching what happens next. Jumaane Williams, thanks for your time tonight.